Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is the Broken Meeple, a show where I rave and rant about board games, but usually more the ranting part, let's be honest. This is kind of ticking off a bucket list one for me actually, from Matthias Cramer, Kraftwagen. I'm not sure if that's the pronunciation, Kraftwagen or Kraftwagen. I think it's more the second one of those actually. And this is, like I said, a bucket list because I wanted to play the first edition of this, like the older version. I'll show a box cover on the screen, but you know, I never really got a chance to play it because nobody really had it. And even when I did see it, I'm like, no, I'm not going to pay money on the second hand to grab it on a whim or something. I want someone to show me it. It wasn't much of a looker, but I like cars. I'm interested in historical cars, up to a point. I mean, I'm not a complete nerd on the subject, but I'm interested. I went to a car museum in the Peak District for during my 40th birthday, and it was quite a nice little tour, a little place. I forget what it was called. I think it was just called the British Car Museum or something, but this game I wanted to try, and so when Arcane Wonders were putting out what they call the limited first edition of basically a re-implementation of it, same sort of theme except we're dealing with American cars rather than German here, and you know, keeping the same mechanics for the most part, I was definitely intrigued to jump into this one and find out. So it's been on my shelf of shame for ages. I got this at Essen, I bought it with my own cash, and I have not had a chance to play it until in the last couple of weeks. So now that I have had the chance to give it the beans, was it worth all the wait?
What are you waiting for? A kiss goodbye?
In Kraftwagen, you are trying to gain the most victory points, reputation points in this case, and you do so by one of two main methods: selling cars to prospective buyers, and by racing your car around the Grand Prix track, effectively two separate sections. The crux of the game actions are familiar to anybody who's played games like Tokaido or Patchwork. Essentially, everybody will have their own disc on this cog action wheel, and whoever is at the back of the wheels from players is the first to go. So in Tokaido, whoever was at the back got to move first. In Patchwork, whoever's behind that of the two players gets to take the next turn. Similar here. You will choose one of the actions in front of you. You will resolve said tile, move your wheel across. It goes back to the back of the chain, and depending on how people choose their actions, how far they leap, can dictate whether they might take one turn next, maybe even two or three in a row, depending on what actions are taken. With these actions, you are basically seeking to do several things. You are seeking to level up your developments on your board, which essentially allow you to build better engines and better bodies. You are seeking to gain said car body. So, for example, we've got a Pierce Arrow 840A DLX 1934. I am not an expert on classic cars, so I don't know if that's a cool car or not. But you can also grab engines of varying different numbers as well. You can also upgrade your Grand Prix car. It has a basic engine to start with, but you might be able to kit it out with some really nice, souped up engines so it can race really fast. But when you have these components to hand in your workshops, you're trying to sell them to prospective buyers. So one of the actions allows you to choose one of four different buyers. One wants a decent car body, one wants luxuries, one wants cheapness, one wants a decent engine. And you set them up for the round to say, right, I want these particular investors in, and then you try to actually put your cars up for sale. So you've got, say, for example, this Pierce Arrow, well, let's grab a Ford 48 convertible here. I've got a size 3 engine for it, and with little meeples you basically increase the luxury. So let's say we're going to sell a body 7 car with an engine level 3 and one luxury in it. That is my car for sale. And then also during the round, you'll be able to race around this Grand Prix track. Everybody has a car. It will move at a speed dictated by how good your Grand Prix car is. And essentially, you leapfrog over other players, do laps, and the more laps you do, the more points you get in a round. Also, whoever is first, second, and third gets points respectively. That's basically what the Grand Prix track is. But the meat of the game is more about trying to time your sales for what buyers are in when the round finishes. The round finishes once there's a certain amount of cars for sale or when a marker moves down the track, and basically each buyer is resolved in turn where they will look at the cars that are on sale and based on what is out there will buy that car from that player and they will gain reputation points. When you put your car up for sale, you will put on it one of several different price point markers from the selection in the round to say, I want to sell this car, let's say, for 12 bucks. 12 bucks is what I'm going to sell it for. Now, whether it gets bought or not depends on the buyers. One buyer, for example, wants the best engine. Well, which one's got the best engine? Right, that's the one it's buying. Is there two with the best engine? Right, well, which one's the cheaper out of the two? And so on and so forth. So one who wants most luxuries is looking for the amount of little meeples. Well, who has the most meeples? And of those people, who is the cheapest? So some cars may not sell during a round. You may find that your car does not sell because you've priced it too high or somebody has beaten you in terms of its, what the buyers want. Or maybe you put something really cheap and and none of the cheap buyers turned up. And after they've been sold, you total up the points from there, and you rinse repeat this for another 2 rounds. You know, going around the action wheel, building your developments up, getting better engines, better car bodies, putting them on sale, and trying to earn reputation points through both the selling and also racing around the Grand Prix track. At the end of 3 rounds, that's it. There's no other endgame scoring. It's 3 rounds are done. Who's got the most points? And of course, the one with the most.
Of course!
Now, if you were to look at the original Kraftwagen game, it's not exactly a looker, is it? It may be graphically sound, but yeah, it looks a bit on the bland side. It definitely looks like one of the old school Euros. Well, Arcane Wonders have certainly done a good job of pimping this one up. It certainly does look a lot nicer on the table. You've got, you know, decent enough artwork across the board. You've got these great thick tiles with all the different cars on, so if you do know anything about some of these classic cars like a Ford BV8 Roadster or Packard 8 or Eliminator Ford, apparently that was on the ZZ Top album or something like that, but you know, you're gonna get some nostalgia feels out of here. Your boards are fold away boards, so they are dual layer, but you don't even get stickers for them. You just sort of punch them out and they go in half, but they won't flip open. They won't do anything crazy like, you know, like during the game, it's all like this. No. They're still pretty good and they do the job. You don't need, you know, to go ape with this kind of stuff. But component-wise and art-wise, it's definitely an improvement. It looks a lot nicer. It's going to get people interested, you know, particularly with the box cover. Now, from the graphic design point of view, generally fine. You know, you can sort of follow things on the board as to where things are going at, but there's only so much graphic design and iconography in this game. Most of it revolves around the action tokens themselves, and once you know what each action does, it doesn't really take much to actually remember how they work. You know, the rules to this are pretty simple, but we're going to get onto the rule book in a second, alright, because we do need to talk about this. The length of the game is pretty good, actually. It's only 75 minutes on the bucks. 90 minutes is probably more likely, particularly with your first game and you've got 4 players, but that should be the absolute max. This game shouldn't take you more than 90 minutes to finish, not including setup and rules, but there's not that many rules to teach, and the setup doesn't take too long either. So, you know, you are looking at a mid-weight, a lower end of the mid-weight category, but also a relatively speedy game, which is nice. It's nice that these games can start being less than the 2-hour mark at times. You know, you can actually play a game of this, you know, several games of this in a game night, and you know, there'll be different feels each time. But I do need to stress that there is a caveat with this. Oh my word. You know, I do come down hard on this kind of thing, alright, with games, because it's now 2025. We should be a lot better than this. But, as much as this game is not the most complex game in the world, dear God, does this rulebook want to make a meal out of it. It's not that the game is unplayable with this rulebook, but for a publisher as well known as Arcane Wonders, and for a game that already has most of the rules set in place because you are basically re-implementing one that's already been made, it shouldn't be that hard to come up with a rulebook for this game and make it clear. But this rulebook has got a lot of typos, weird iconography differences, like the iconography on this doesn't look the same as this, you know, badly worded areas where sometimes I don't even get what the rules are. You have to go on BGG to find out from this. You know, Paul Gregan had a field day with the rulebook on this one, and yeah, I can see why, you know, because even I'm reading it and going, hang on a minute, that don't make sense, that doesn't match. What, you know, am I supposed to take these off at the end or what? It's like, what? This is insane. And they've put an errataed version up on Board Game Geek, but that doesn't forgive you for the fact that you should have got it right in the first place. There's a thing called proofreading, there's a thing called checking and quality control. You know, let's leave the rulebook aside. Is the game still fun to play? Yeah, generally it is fun. I mean, it is cool using the action wheel. It's a very angsty turn decision to decide, right, well, hang on, do I want to go, like, leap all the way forward to get that action, or should I just go to the next one in front of the line and then hopefully get some bonus actions later? Well, yeah, that's what people fall into the trap of. But if you try to get a bunch of actions more than another player, you may still get actions that aren't really helping you. You need those critical actions, like I really badly need an engine so I can put a car up for sale. Well, that means I've got to leap forward 3 or 4 spaces. But if you want the engine, you're going to need to do that. If you wait, somebody else might take it and then you're screwed. So, you know, timing is everything. You've got to be willing to do it. And I like the mechanic. That works very nicely on this wheel. Some actions are certainly more popular than others at times, but you know, for the most part, it still works quite well. The Grand Prix track is kind of like an afterthought, really. I mean, I get it. You're playing a game about making cars, so it kind of makes sense that you could do something like racing around a racetrack. But overall the racetrack is kind of meh. You literally just move this car around, do laps for points, and you leapfrog over people as you go around. Now what tends to happen with the Grand Prix track is, particularly with a 3 or 4 player game, is 2 people will munchkin the track like crazy, meaning that the other players just ignore it entirely. There's no incentive for me to spend time going around this track if somebody's moving 7 spaces every time they take the Grand Prix action, and and I can barely catch them up. It's like, fine, do whatever you want to do on the Grand Prix track. So you either focus heavily on it or you pretty much ignore it. There's no point being like half and half with it. It just would have been nice if there was more to it than just a glorified track. I mean, you literally could just have a cube track and that you move up spaces like in a beige Euro, and it would have the exact same effect as the Grand Prix track. It's not exactly revolutionary here. Really, the main focus of the game, other than this action wheel, is the whole idea with this market and the buyers. You have to take actions to attract specific buyers. It's all well and good having the best engine of everybody in the group, but if the buyer who wants engines doesn't get put into the mix, then what does it matter? Somebody else is going to have that off you. So this becomes quite a cool interactive element where people are influencing the market as a whole. That's pretty cool. They're putting the cars up for sale where you've got to say, right, I need this body with this engine and this many people, as you're looking at what other players are capable of doing. Like, can somebody beat me on an engine if there was enough time in the round? Is it worth ending the round now so that people can't attract the wrong buyer or put something in ahead of me? And then even just deciding how much money you're going to sell it for. I mean, that is a pretty tricky decision, although they give you about like 8 markers to pick from on this board. Typically, you will never pick the most expensive marker unless you're guaranteed you'll sell it for that. The cheap one is usually always taken because usually the cheap buyer gets in there and he gives you double points anyway. So you're really kind of taking the ones in the middle for the most part, and it just sort of means that you're not quite as varied on this as it could be. But timing is key. You've got to really be prepared to think, right, okay, I need to put this car in now. So-and-so could beat me on this, so-and-so could beat me on that. So shall I wait for them to put something in and then beat them, or get in there first and then the round? That stuff is pretty cool. But this game does end up being quite punishing as a result, because you might have gone through all the effort to get a car in there, got your body and got your workshop done actions for it, and then it doesn't sell. And it's like, well, that was a waste of time then, really. It's kind of like, it feels a little bit punishing in that respect. And there's only 3 rounds in the game. So if you have a bad round, it's very difficult to actually recover compared to somebody who's already gaining points every round. So you can't really afford to mess up. And sometimes you don't mess up because it's your problem. You, like, in the middle of the round, I mean, there's very little incentive to put a car in first. You really want to get a car in after other people have done it. But you might, in the middle of the round, shove in this car, and you're like, yeah, that's a pretty good car. The right buyer's there. It should all be good. And then by the time you get a chance to even do anything with the market, several actions have happened. People have shoved in cars that are beating you or doing stuff like that. And the round is ended maybe 1 turn sooner than you could have wanted. And then suddenly it all goes to pot. Your plan just fails. And it's like, well, it's not really a get good thing. I mean, a lot of actions happened by the time I got a chance to even do anything more with the market. And this is particularly profound with 4 players. I think this game doesn't work as well with 4. But then you can argue it also doesn't work as well with 2, because with 2, you don't get as much fun out of this action wheel as you could with more players. With 4, this market is too chaotic. I mean, you put something in and suddenly everything's just drastically different by the time you have a chance to do anything with the market. And so 4 players just feels too chaotic for my liking. Your plans will just go agley, you can't really control it, and that feels a bit of a downer. So really, this game is sweetly situated at 3 players, which does limit on a player scaling front. I don't think it works as well as 2, I don't like it as much at 4, so I'm really restricted to 3. That's a bit of a limitation. These tiles that you can grab as well during the rounds, you can get investors, investors, engineers, and these special bonuses. These purple ones just really aren't worth the cardboard they're printed on. I mean, to take an entire action just to grab one of these instant effects rarely seems worth it. For the most part, you're grabbing investors and engineers, and honestly, you're grabbing the engineers a lot more than the investors, because the engineers are guaranteed awesome. They have great abilities that allow you to completely screw over other players at times with the market and that, or just benefit yourself, but they also come with the engineer tokens that allow you to level up your development tracks at the same time, because normally you have to do it one at a time and within certain spacing of each other. So the engineers are just universally useful. The investors are sort of useful, but they're more of a gamble. The production token they give you is good. It allows you to sell a car twice. but you have to make certain that that production token is going to work. You have to you have to do it on one of your turns, so you know you might not have had a chance to put it out before the round ends. I had that problem in one game. But they then buy cars after the prospective buyers have finished, if there's any left. But again, you're gambling on the fact that that car is going to be left and it's going to go to you, because all sorts of things could happen by that point. And so, whereas an engineer is always good, an engineer could be good, but it could also be a waste of space. So most of the time people don't take these investors very often. You're always just gunning for engineers. They're a little bit too powerful. So Kraftwagen overall is okay, it's fine, but I still feel a little bit deflated after playing it. It's definitely, you know, given me some enjoyment with the action wheel and, you know, looking at a bit of nostalgia with these cars and the whole attracting prospective buyers and stuff. You know, that's all well and good, but the Grand Prix track just feels a bit whatever. It's just a track, you know, that's nothing else. And, you know, the player scaling does limit how often I'm going to get this played, because I don't want to play it at 2, and I don't particularly want to play it at 4, so it's only 3. I mean, you could convince me to play it at 4, but then I know that this market is just going to occasionally say, well, you planned some stuff pretty well, but, oh well, market says screw you, you didn't get enough turns to retaliate. And it's like, that just feels a little bit annoying, and it is very punishing to have a bad round in this game. The other aspects do irk me a little bit, you know, the engineers being a little bit too sought after and powerful, the idea that the rulebook has these annoying little issues. And I say the rulebook is not terrible, but for a 2025 by a mainstream publisher who's been told that these rules, you know, had little issues with it, I can't forgive them from just putting an errata version online and just going, yeah, that's fine or whatever, because a lot of people are going to open this, look at this rulebook, find glaring weird issues in it, and have their experience is going to be lessened by it, and certainly it is with me. You know, I now have to have a list of the erratas nearby, or, you know, something to remind me if I put this game down and bring it out, I'm going to need to remember. So the rating is quite a tricky one, but overall I think, you know, it's got quality points. It does have the market system, which, you know, as punishing as it can be, is still fun. The action wheel is a good mechanic. I like it in these games. It is relatively short. You know, you can keep it to 90 minutes pretty easily, shorter with less players. It's not complicated to teach. I mean, if you've got somebody who has got a memory of the rules and knows all the little bits that don't make sense, it is quite an easy game to teach to players, and, you know, that in itself is pretty cool. And it's produced well and does the job. So I think I can go to a 6 out of 10, but not to a great extent. You know, this is kind of teetering on the 5 and 6 mark, and I'm saying it's above average. You know, it's a fine game. I know there's fans of it, and I can see where the fans are enjoying some aspects, but for me, a punishing market at 4 players, you know, those rulebook limitations, the fact that the Grand Prix track is kind of meh, you know, it's a game that makes me go, yeah, that's fine, and it's got its merits, but I just feel a bit deflated. You know, I don't get excited for this. And for a game about cars, given that I love Kanban and I like cars in general, I wanted to be more excited for this after I played it, and I feel like maybe I just, you know, expected too much. I don't know, but 6 out of 10 barely. It's a fine game. It's going to have some fans, but not one that I can say you need to rush out. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the page. Let me know your thoughts down below. Have you played the original version of Kraftwagen? Do you think it's better than this one? Have you played both? Are they pretty much the same game? You know, do you agree with the problems with the player scaling? Are you actually a fan of the punishing market aspect? You know, was the rulebook a major issue for you as well? You know, certainly I think there's a lot of people that are going to come and defend the rulebook, but you know, I want better. I want better in 2025. That's all I'm saying. Don't forget to consider subscribing to the channel, but also consider subscribing to the Patreon if you want to help to keep this channel going, because your views and engagement are what help me keep this up as a side hobby. It's not my day job. So remember, regardless of whether you're more prone to a Cadillac or a Chrysler, it's still only a game. So take care and have fun. Bye-bye.